Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Care. The 79th annual Tony Awards have just taken place. First things first, for the second year in a row, I overall got 22 out of 26 categories correct. In three of my predictions, I went against the choices that were ranked number one in the odds on Gold Derby, two of which I got right, which were Best Featured Actor in a Play. I smartly settled on Alden Ehrenreich and Becky Shaw over Christopher Abbott in Death of a Salesman, and Best Sound Design of a Play, I predicted Death of a Salesman instead of Oedipus. As for the categories I got wrong, first, Best Sound Design of a Musical. The Gold Derby odds favorite Cats the Jellicle Ball, although I settled on The Lost Boys, as I expected that show to win most of the design categories, especially given how tech heavy of a production that it's supposed to be. And given that sound designer for the former, Kai Harada, was up against himself for Ragtime, I wondered if he was going to split his support. And in the end, Harada did win, but not for Cats, for Ragtime. Just goes to show how tricky it still is to predict the winners in this category, given that's voted on by a peer group who's more intimately familiar with the craft of theatrical sound design. The second category I got wrong was Best Original Score. In my predictions video, I mentioned that I was settling on Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York in this category as the place to award the little show that could. I knew it was possible that Schmigadoon could beat it, but I wondered if there was going to be enough voters scoffing at the fact that the score wasn't 100% original, as a good deal of it was lifted from the first season of the original television series. Yet that didn't matter, as Cinco Paul managed to win three Tonys in one night. The other two were for Best Book and Best Musical as a co producer on the show. Although I loved how, in his acceptance speech, Cinco called out what a weak year it was for new musicals, and that producers should really be taking more chances on them. So, hey, good on you, Cinco. The third category I got wrong was Best Featured Actor in a Musical. As I mentioned in my predictions video, pretty much any of the nominees but Bryce Pinkham and Chess had a shot of winning. I went with the consensus by predicting the legendary Andre DeShields to win, although I have heard some predictors question if voters were going to find his stick in Cats the Jellicle Ball to be too similar to his stick in Hadestown. I knew that on paper it could put him at a disadvantage, but I didn't know who else to predict. Then Awi Louis Borsky was revealed as the winner for The Lost Boys. I mean, good for him, because 2 years ago, he was widely predicted to make the cut for Best Lead Actor in a Musical for his Broadway debut as the title character in the revival The Who's Tommy, but didn't. Just goes to show how sometimes good things come to those who wait. Now, the fourth and final category I got wrong was Best Musical Revival. All season long, this was seen as one of the biggest races of the year, if not the biggest. The New York Times' Tony voter survey even said that it was too close to call. I settled on Cats the Jellicle Ball due to the fact that it fits the mold of a lot of the more recent winners of this category as this bold reimagining of a musical everyone thought they knew, but got to see it in such a new, exciting way. Yet when Sting opened the envelope and announced Ragtime as the winner, I was like, oh my gosh! As someone who only goes to New York every once in a while, Ragtime was the only one of this year's nominated productions I got to see and thought was absolutely astounding. So clearly, I was happy to be proven wrong. But how did a more straightforward staging win out over a more experimental one? I have a feeling that for voters, it was probably head versus heart, and those who voted for Ragtime over Cats simply went with their hearts. After all, Ragtime has so many more emotional layers than Cats, the latter of which many have left the current revival with a ton of joy, yet with the former, they were clearly more moved by. And for longtime fans of Ragtime, I'm sure they're very happy to finally see the musical itself get its due with a Best Production Prize from the Tonys. And it's kind of funny how 28 years ago, the original lost Best Musical to The Lion King, while this time around, the revival triumphed over a completely different set of felines. And I also appreciated them letting composer Stephen Flaherty speak during the acceptance speech, but poor lyricist Lynn Ahrens got cut off. If that was Bette Midler, she pretty much would have yelled, "Shut that crap off!" As for the actual telecast, when I saw the announcement that Pink was going to be this year's host, I thought it was a joke at first, especially since aside from having a couple of her songs incorporated into a couple of jukebox musicals, she's never actually appeared on Broadway yet. Although she did recently move to New York in support of her teenage daughter Willow, who's obsessed with musical theater, and I'll admit, I thought Pink did a pretty solid job as host. It started off with her doing a pretty amusing parody of some classic Broadway musicals such as Peter Pan and Wicked, which included a nice appearance from four-time host Neil Patrick Harris. Then it got bigger with hundreds, specifically those from this year's nominated musical productions, on stage performing one of her big hits, Lady Marmalade. I always have liked the opening numbers where all the nominated musicals get to participate in, so that was nice to see, even if the number itself probably did get a little too bombastic for my liking. And I also enjoyed this one bit from later on in the show where three-time host Ariana DeBose came out to give Pink some pointers. As for the musical performances, I thought most of them offered quite a bit of energy. The intro to the Schmigadoon performance in particular was quite a clever one at that. And Ragtime came off great, even though I did notice that it was pretty much following the same truncated version of its opening the original followed at the 1998 ceremony. I also really liked how between Hamilton last year and the Book of Mormon this year, the Tonys have really gotten into reuniting the original casts of these long-running hits for a performance on the telecast lately. Not to mention that's the long-running revival of Chicago, which will be celebrating its 30th anniversary on Broadway this fall, really put on quite a medley featuring alumni from the show as well as some celebrity guest spots. And I'm starting to get some ideas for some potential anniversary tributes for next year's telecast. Like in 2027, The Lion King will be celebrating its 30th anniversary of opening on Broadway. It will mark 40 years since Les Miserables originally opened in New York and 50 years for Annie. Just saying. And the in memoriam segment with Leslie Odom Jr. singing Without You from Rent, a musical currently celebrating 30 years since it originally opened, was stunning. And one aspect I thought was neat was how the Best Play and Best Play Revival nominees were covered. Similar to how the Oscars have highlighted their Best Picture nominees in recent years, they showed separate montages for each of the nominees with commentary from the people involved throughout the night. So, hey, good on the producers of the telecast for doing that. Also, something I've noticed about some of these more recent Tony telecasts is how randomly spread out the category presentations are. The first award of the night on the CBS broadcast was Best Lead Actor in a Play. Meanwhile, the final two play categories presented were Best Featured Actor in a Play and Best Revival of a Play. I mean, I literally have no idea what the hell is behind all of this, but it clearly needs fixing. Earlier, I was pretty enthusiastic about the anniversary performances, although one that I felt didn't quite work was the tribute to a chorus line, which only consisted of a clip package followed by Rachel Zegler singing all alone on stage, singing What I Did for Love. While she absolutely sounded great, it still seemed odd that this was all we got for a 50th anniversary tribute to one of the most celebrated Broadway musicals of all time. I mean, they couldn't have done something similar to the Chicago tributes performance. I mean, it probably would have been a better idea to have alums from various stage productions to sing What I Did for Love together, and maybe have someone dance to some of Michael Bennett's original choreography. Like, they could have had Ariana DeBose perform her rendition of The Music Against the Mirror. In fact, when I spoke with her over the phone for Broadway World in 2019, she told me that she got to do that show when she was in high school. As for the ratings, according to early reports, the telecast averaged about 4.73 million viewers, which is only slightly down from last year's 4.85 million, so to not be at an all-time low is not too shabby. Although now comes an even bigger question. This year marks the end of the Tonys' current contract with CBS. The network's parent company, Paramount Skydance, has now become a propaganda tool of the Trump administration. It should be interesting to see whether or not the contract will end up getting renewed. If it doesn't, could the Tonys make the move to streaming like how the Oscars will be starting in 2029? I've seen people excited about the idea of the Oscars heading to YouTube, in part because that means they would have less restrictions than they normally would have on a regular broadcast network. That would also apply to the Tonys, where a live stream could potentially include presentations for every single award, as opposed to having half on the pre show and the other half on CBS. I guess we shall see. And as one Broadway season ends, another is about to begin, and let's hope it's better than the last one, specifically regarding new musicals.